Hello, everyone, and welcome to Osquery Office Hours. Here we are in May. At least in Boston, it's sunny, but a little chilly, so that's what we are. I hope it's nice where everyone else is. Um, First section is announcements or highlights since the last meeting. I don't think I have any announcements. I don't know if anyone else does. Okay, next up is sort of a broad section for questions, issues, PRs people want to discuss. Kind of just an open-ended section for people who are just joining us to ask anything on their minds.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's imagine someone before me has done a job, some work on PR, and he's no longer working on the project, and I want to continue with his job. So what's the best way to continue with that?
My guess. So is this someone who you have any business relationship with? Is it like a coworker?
No.
It's just like an abandoned PR.
Yes, abandoned completely, and I don't know the guy.
Have they signed the CLA?
Okay.
Because my feeling is that if someone has signed the CLA and there is a PR up, then effectively you could just take that code. So make a branch off of that branch and iterate from it. If they haven't signed the CLA, then I do not think we have the rights to the code. But if they have signed the CLA, then we could merge the code and it becomes part of our project, and then you could fork and iterate off of that. So you could just fork the branch. But I think it comes down to a bit whether or not they've signed the CLA.
Okay. Thank you.
If they haven't signed the CLA, then I think you should not look at, you'd have to re-implement clean room style.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think general process would just be, it's all open source. You could just fork their branch and go from there.
Yeah, but it's not. Well, maybe he get angry. I don't want to.
I mean, if they've abandoned it, probably not. You could leave a comment being like, "Hey, I'm going to pick this up," or like, "I'm going to look at it over here." But as I said, I think if they've signed the CLA, then effectively we have rights to the code. So by all means, you could do it, and you could consider the magic GitHub markup in the PR to sort of co-author credit for them. And if this is perhaps a PR related to Mac OS logging, then there's at least two people who have done work on that.
Yeah, I know.
So I'm overjoyed to see another person picking it up.
Okay. Well, that's it for me.
All right. Seth, where are we on the agenda here?
We are up to releases.
5.3?
Yeah, I mean 5.3, 5.4. I don't even know what the state of our releases are anymore.
We're past due by 25 days on 5.3.
I think I at least got kind of distracted just reviewing PRs and getting them merged.
Yeah, we merged recently a lot of things that I feel good about some of the progress on the PR backlog. I think we had like 40 something PRs and we've down to 26. Pretty good.
Yeah, and I think of these ones too. I promised someone I would review one of their PRs before I cut the next release. And I think several of these PRs are probably good to merge. Yeah, if I just look at like the top set of these, right? You've got your PR about changing names in the specs. I think we could just merge that.
Okay, I'll merge that.
You opened a parsing PR and draft. I think that's probably not going to merge fast. There's this OpenSSL.
It needs to be regression tested. There's a lot of kernel versions.
There's this OpenSSL thing from Alessandro. Do you want to get that in like real soon, Alessandro, or less soon?
Likely for this release would be
Okay.
best. Since
So
this is some,
it's approved. So I mean, I think you could just merge it whenever, whenever
Okay.
you're happy.
I'll hit merge.
yeah, it was approved, but I wanted to make sure that people understood what was happening in there. We are including an additional column, alternatives for issuer and subject. We are switching API to gather this kind of information. The API works better and it is more sturdy against the characters. However, the output is it has been changed. It's kind of different, and you're going to have to compare both the old version and the new version if you have some queries trying to pattern match things. So our idea was to introduce the traditional columns for now and deprecate the old ones, and then in future release rename the columns again and remove the old ones. So the columns are named issuer 2 and subject 2.
How are they different?
So there's an example in the pull request, but the original version was splitting fields with a backslash character or a forward slash, while the new one is using spaces and dashes.
It's also using quotes on strings.
Yeah,
It's
right.
Okay, I see there's conversation here. Sorry, I haven't caught up on this. So this sounds like it's fundamentally a change in recommendation from the underlying library.
Yeah, the one-line API call is no longer suggested and no longer recommended to be used.
So my gut sense, so I've thought about comparing certificate values like this in the past, and my understanding is that there is no real string representation because the order of those things can change. Right, it's a dict, it's not a string. So something like C equals CUS, ST, Arizona, L Scottsdale, right? You could get those in any order, even if there's generally a particular locality ordering that happens. So with that context, I feel like it should be fine to kind of change that a little bit. I don't feel like that's ever been a guaranteed format, but that doesn't mean people didn't break it. I think if you want to spread it out across 2 releases, that's probably fine. We should make sure we tag it as like a deprecation or something. Write about it. I think that's fine. I might even just do it in 1 release, but
Yeah,
not so much baggage I want to carry.
Otherwise, it should be ready. Another short video has taken a look at it. Stefan also made a second and third pass on it, and actually found a bug because the OpenSSL API is not fun to work with.
Yeah, and thanks for improving that code. I feel terrible I wrote all that crap.
Oh, well, I was going to introduce a different bug if Stefano hasn't got it. There's a different dedicated free function for big num objects, and I was using the wrong one, so I would have introduced a lick.
I did have one question. So I commented on this. We're taking all of these. We're basically replacing nulls with empty strings, which I don't love. Like maybe it's fine here, but whenever there's like all these other, our code base is really inconsistent about null versus empty string and whatnot. And
I also don't really like it, but we had found some crashes in the past where the extended schema in some tables were sometimes skipping columns and sometimes not.
The what schemas?
So
extended schemas.
Yeah, and so if you were to query those tables from the internal interface, from the code, those columns would be missing, and then you would crash trying to access it, which is different if you try to call the same tables in other places with different APIs. Because if you use like the schedule queries, you will normally get empty strings or zeros because we do not support on the outside null columns. And so, yeah, we have this weird behaviors of using empty strings or zeros
So
when we don't have a value.
sounds like you're setting an empty string so you can force the column to be present.
Yes.
And forgive me because I am not a C++ expert, right? But like in something like Ruby, right? If I had a hash map in Ruby, probably even in Go, whether the existence of a key is different than what its value is set to. So like in Ruby or Go, if I in a map, if I set, issuer equals null or nil, then if I just iterate the map, that column would be present. So is there like, what if we just said, our issuer equals whatever, is there like a SQL null or something? Like, because I'm wondering if this is like the difference between not setting anything and explicitly setting a null.
Well, so ideally we would want to use real types in the tables and move away from strings.
Well, that
And
too.
in that case, we could use things like boost optional or std optional, and actually have the none or null opt type.
We can't do that with the status quo.
No.
Okay.
There is, so yeah, the current interface between the table logic and the SQLite, basically, or the core, is a map, is a hash map of strings. Key is a string, value is a string. So actually, you cannot, you cannot express really now. So, or well, if you're not creating the key, with an empty value inside that, that could be considered as null. But I think we have changed that, and I'm not even sure we are actually returning null anymore, because this is something I was like testing. I haven't found out what was happening, but when I was trying to implement the users and groups performance improvement for Windows, there was a moment where I had to differentiate or had to deal with null or empty strings inside the table logic, which we do not pass through constraints right now. And I could not get a null basically anymore. We always get, it seems we always get an empty string. Even if we actually set, like we set the that key has a value empty string, or we don't set anything. But there may be still differences, as Alessandro says, with the more internal APIs we use, like we have select all from and things like that. So yeah, it definitely makes sense to try to uniform things. And though back on the types, there is a start of, so we have actually 3 ways right now that I have seen that we are doing things basically. So the most common one is the query data structure, which is just a redefinition again of a hash map with key string, value string. This is the main one. Then we have some of the request tables, which actually are accessing the generated code columns, basically. And those are, those are typed, but we cannot express null there, because you have integers, strings, maybe booleans, but yeah, there's no value basically. And the third one is I think through this partially implemented thing that was done in experimental. There is this, I think, query data type. But yeah, that was an attempt from Will team to transform everything into typed. But yeah, and actually you're forced to use that new kind of type when you're using extensions, which means that you have to do some trickery to convert types. But yeah,
Omar.
this is the current state. There is a bit of uniforming to do.
Yeah, it sounds like, okay, so the things I got out of that are like, we can't just omit the value, because if we omit the key completely, then sometimes we drop the column, especially around the internal APIs and extended schemas. And we can't simply set it to nil, because there's a whole bunch of internal API that assumes it's a map of strings. And then there's like been efforts around changing that, and none of them are really ready for prime time.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for going over it. I'll probably forget in 6 months, but I wrote it down. Yeah. So I think we ended up on this digression because I think probably at least 5 of these PRs are about ready to merge. So that should be pretty clean. I promised ICO1 that I would review the authorized keys PR he's got up. So should I just cut 530 like at the end of the week or something? Should we just merge a bunch of these and go?
Let's not merge anything breaking. I think some of these, like, we split specifically to give warning. Like,
I think just one.
one.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the CLI flags is the only one I can think of that we know we wanted to hold off on.
Uh, 5.2.3 is like kind of in an incomplete state, I guess. The website didn't reflect it exists, but
Yeah, I haven't updated the website. So someone else could. I can try and get to that. There's a script somewhere for it.
Do we consider 5.2.3 stable?
it's the current version, but the
Similar.
website doesn't show it. People were confused in Slack.
Finish automating the website. Okay. I don't think there's much talk about 5.4.0. Like, I think we're talking about doing 5.3.0 this week, and then we'll do 5.4.0 when we do 5.4.0. Next agenda item. Oh, does anyone else have other releases or PR things they want to talk about?
I want to briefly just give an update on the endpoint security-based FIM. I switched out an API so that it now builds on Catalina as well. It's related to the path muting. Not super happy about it because there's a tiny bit of performance hit, but it's okay. I saw what Santa is doing. So on Monterey, when you launch a new ES client, Apple kind of adds a bunch of default paths, system paths that are muted. And Santa basically just applies it to older ES clients as well. I don't know if I want to hard code it, but I'm updating the documentation to kind of mention those default paths if people do want to include them in their configurations.
I think it'd be fine to hard code them. I think it'd be fine to not. You know, it's kind of, if you run it on Monterey, you're just going to get those muted anyhow. So
Yeah.
hard coding them and being like, man, here you go. and being like, versus letting someone, hand adjust it. If you let someone hand adjust it the first time, they're probably going to get it wrong, and then they're going to go read the docs, or they're going to bother Slack, and then they're going to do it. And if you have it auto muting them, then like you'll get one person who'll be like, I really need to see this path. But what would they do on Monterey? Is there a way to unmute them?
There is a way to unmute them, but it's before you subscribe. You have to like explicitly say like, hey, here are the list of paths. Don't set the default.
Does your code?
I'm not going to support that.
No.
Not
Okay. So if someone shows up and is like, I really want this system path, then presumably we'll be like, cool, PRs are welcome.
And it's the default for Monterey, and I think it makes sense because otherwise it's too noisy, and those are under SIP, and there are platform binaries.
Okay. If you want to make it the default, if you want to dock it, I think either's fine. I think in both cases we'll get it.
Other than that, just needs review. CI is passing and tested on M1 and Intel.
Cool.
So should we target that for 5.3 as well?
My guess is that's a bigger PR. And if we're going to try and cut 5.3 this week, it might be ambitious, but I haven't looked at it, so maybe it's not ambitious.
I'll happy to address feedback quickly. So
Well, maybe we can get it in then. I don't mean to speak prescriptively. I just pragmatically, I don't know if it's
Sure, makes sense. It also, I mean, I think it also doesn't affect other things too much since it has to be explicitly turned on. And it's a new table.
Sounds real nice. That's everything we've got on the agenda. Does anyone want to talk about anything else? Oh wait, otherwise we could have 35 minutes back.
Cool.
All right.
Maybe I'll go update the website.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
that'd be great.
Okay, well, thank you all for your time and code and PRs effort. And I will talk to you all on Slack.
thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Bye.
I